Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of season 1 of the Cooltific podcast. I'm your host, Gabriel. So today we're going to be discussing three topics. The first topic is going to be general topics, and then religion, and then we're going to talk about the future. So let's begin with general topics. So, I've been working on the podcast for really only about two or so days. I mean, since I had the dream about 3 days ago, 3 days ago, I've definitely been trying to work on it the best I can. And it kind of makes you question like what the best like what what's your optimal ability basically, like in any given situation, especially when you're working on kind of a long-term project like this podcast, for example. Like I guess it can be a little bit difficult to determine that because maybe you're kind of used to operating at, a certain level of effort, if that makes sense, or efficiency. Like in my case, like, I'm kind of, I think this goes for like people in general, like you pretty much you do things with a certain level of efficacy and you kind of get used to it, if that makes sense. And so, like, like for example, if you live in a dirty house, like your house is really disorganized, your average efficacy is maybe tidying up like certain areas of the house that you can't stand to be dirty, but like most of the house is filthy anyways. So in order to kind of increase your efficacy, you have to, well, essentially put in more effort than what's typically executed. So, for example, if I have a dirty desk, then like I have to put in more conscious effort over a certain period of time in order to increase my average efficacy in being clean. And then eventually my brain will adjust, hopefully, will create the habit of just maintaining that cleanliness or maintaining, for example, the podcast or maintaining your exercise routine or just whatever you need to, increase more effort on. But unfortunately, it can be a little difficult to, you know, I don't know. It can be it can be a little difficult to consciously put in more effort into something because it's typically a little painful. There's a little bit of what you would say is a eustress. There's a little bit of eustress involved, and eustress is, is usually considered positive stress. So it's kind of like this resistance that ultimately, if you allow that resistance to affect you and you rise above it, it's almost like it refines you, and that it's that refining from the eustress that allows you to uh, actually, develop, new pathways in your brain uh, in order to, gain more skill. So that's something that's pretty interesting. Um, Another thing that's been kind of on my mind lately has been like just trying to evoke like this sense of how do I put it, of order in my head when it comes to like how I view abstract ideas. Like how to explain this. Like, for example, you kind of have these basic assumptions about other people. And, for example, like I have a basic assumption about others that maybe like you can maybe if you're a little neurotic, you can kind of form this basic assumption that other people uh, are against you. Uh, but like if you organize it a certain way, you organize like their behavior and what they've done in the past, and also kind of extrapolate information from your own self about how you operate usually, you can actually like through that organization come to realize that it's a little bit more subtle, that there's a little bit more, it's more of a gradient when it comes like, or even a spectrum of gradients when it comes to people's behavior and the thought processes than like kind of this one, you know, continuous theme with X or Y or Z person. So, uh, I think I'll have to work on that. I think I'll have to work on that idea because, yeah, a little confusing. But I've been having a good day so far. I've been, I've been keeping clean, like I've been mentioning cleanliness a lot, but I've been keeping clean. I've definitely been, just trying to stay disciplined with my environment and with myself. I haven't been eating as healthy as I should be, and that kind of becomes an issue, obviously, if you're gaining weight, or if your organs are having problems, or really if you just don't feel so good, a lot of the time. That's kind of an issue that occurs when you don't eat very healthy, especially if you eat a lot of sugar, is that you just don't feel that good a lot of the time. You just kind of feel, drained, and your intuition's a little sapped, and really just your perception of things is just a little drained and sapped. So that's not really fun. So, eat your vegetables, kids. Drink that shake every day, it's good for you. So, uh, I, but like I said, I've generally been in a good mood today. I've been making progress with my podcast, with this podcast, and I've been listening to a lot of music that I've been, enjoying quite a bit. Uh, I just got off listening to Dream Pop, and Dream Pop's interesting because it's like it just has such an ethereal quality, and that's actually like a pretty enjoyable set of emotions to experience based off of that. Like sometimes you don't want something to be like super sharp and clear, with the aesthetic. Sometimes it's nice for things to be foggy and blurry, and maybe a little like dreamlike, if that makes sense. It just kind of takes you out of, your perpetual illusion of what reality is, So that can be pretty nice. Uh, Another thing that I've been thinking about is potentially going to school over the winter, or maybe during spring. I haven't really been sure what I should do about that, because I live in a small town in Idaho, and the thing is that I don't know. There's not too many academic opportunities in this part of the state. There is BYU, which is fairly close by, but just like we're about to get into religion in a moment, I'm not really one for the LDS faith, the Mormon faith. I'm not really one for attending an institution where religion's kind of an overarching thing. I kind of prefer to steer clear of those things. I don't. I mean, we're about to get to religion anyways, but I don't necessarily identify as like an atheist, but I'm just generally irreligious. I guess you could say I don't really practice those things. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to, you know, maybe attend an academic institution eventually, but we shall see where that goes. So, uh, by the way, leave in the comments if you guys are going to school. If you're attending university or community college, maybe tell me what school you're going to in the comments. I would appreciate being able to read them. Uh, Another thing that I've been, just as another general topic, another thing that's kind of been on my mind is like, how do I explain this? Like uh, travel. I've been really wondering about like what I should do travel wise for the next few months. So like I said, I live in Idaho, and so I don't really like, there's Montana to the northeast, and then there's Wyoming to the east, and Nevada and Utah to the south. But I've been considering maybe traveling to the East Coast, like maybe like New York or Pennsylvania, maybe even New England. I don't know. I just want to potentially get an experience uh, of the other side of the country, kind of see what that's like. It might be very interesting. I don't know. Maybe hear like difference in accents. If I mean, that's more of a thing in the South, I guess. But it might be a fairly interesting endeavor to go to the East Coast. I don't know much about that area really. I haven't actually been to the Northeast of the United States, so I don't know. It might be interesting. So maybe we'll go find out what's going on over there. So now we're going to continue into topic two, which is going to be Religion in German, I guess, religion. So, uh, I didn't grow up in the Mormon Church, but my father and my mother did, and I actually went through a bit of a phase in my early teenage years where I converted to Christianity, and I eventually got baptized in the Mormon Church, and I don't know, I felt like that was a valid path for me, but at the time, but really, I just by this point, like, I think there's a lot of valuable things in the Mormon religion, like like the word of wisdom, as they say, which is, don't drink alcohol, don't smoke cigarettes or tobacco, just steer clear of unhealthy substances like that. Even though sometimes I'll drink coffee. I don't smoke, thankfully, but anymore. But uh, like, we believe in a God that cares about everyone, and won't send you to hell. They'll just send you to spirit prison, which doesn't sound as fun. Like, doesn't sound that much fun either. But it's better than hellfire, I guess. But yeah, so my father grew up in the Mormon religion, and I would say that he struggled with it a lot because he around when he was 11, 12 years old, he just he didn't really believe in the religion anymore, but his parents kind of forced him to continue attending church, and they wanted him to believe, and that kind of the same thing happened for my mom, and it just they just couldn't continue because, like, they just, I guess maybe they didn't see evidence for the religion being true, and so they just kind of went off and did their own thing eventually when they became adults and formed their own belief systems. So yeah, another thing about religion that's interesting is stuff like Hinduism. Hinduism is really interesting because you can you peer into the history of India really in general, but also Hinduism, and it goes back thousands of years. It's probably younger than like the Egyptian religions, but it's definitely like an old set of beliefs, stemming from like the Vedas and stuff that like has continued on even into the modern, landscape of India, and so, or culturescape, if you want to use the. I think I invented the word culturescape. I don't think that's a thing, but there's so many different gods and goddesses, and they have a lot of interesting beliefs about like yoga, and how discipline and meditation and all these different spiritual practices can actually lead to like what they would deem like moksha, or like liberation from your karma, and eventually being able to like become one with the Atman, which is not the Atman, but Brahman, which is the ultimate reality of things. And this might not be accurate what I'm saying, but this is just from what I can recall. Uh, you also have Buddhism, which is really interesting because with Buddhism, you know, uh, it's interesting with Buddhism because I feel like the story with the Buddha is somewhat similar to the story of Jesus because with Buddha, I guess in a way it's almost the opposite because Buddha was a wealthy prince who was raised in a fortress, right? At least according to the probably the myth, right? Um, and he ventured out into suffering, into poverty, and like destitution in order to experience the life of the common person. And what's interesting with Jesus is that like he was born into kind of a lower class, uh, was it Judea? I don't know if it was the kingdom of Judea that he was born in. I'm not sure. But he was born into poverty, and he kind of lived that life initially, and eventually he was sacrificed and on the cross. But in the case of Buddha, he was raised initially in riches, and and he ventured out and wanted to learn the truth about reality and suffering, and that's pretty much what he did. He freaking meditated under the Bodhi tree, and eventually came to his own understanding of like what the truth behind all of reality is. And it's interesting because kind of a core tenet of Buddhism is that there is suffering in this life, and there's continuous suffering in many different ways because of cravings and attachments and stuff like that. And meditation is a great way to eliminate those cravings, which ultimately cause more pain and suffering and karma and karma accruance. And I think some of the elements of Buddhism you can kind of strip away and into and integrate into a modern 21st century lifestyle. With meditation and mindfulness, stuff like that. It just kind of that kind of stuff can allow you to live a more peaceful and grounded existence, and that can be quite a blessing, especially if you have, like you say, mental illness, or if you just struggle with a lot of stress about, say the future, which we'll get into in a minute, or just a lot of responsibilities, all those things. Uh, you know, kind of implementing a little bit of Buddhist practice can definitely help ground you. Uh, Another interesting topic, which we'll probably get into in a later episode in the season, is occultism. And I kind of have mixed opinions about occultism, but occultism is another interesting set of spiritual practices, which kind of like, its function is to reveal hidden aspects about reality and about yourself that will allow you to, in a case of like magical practice, like you can influence via your willpower. You can influence reality, and you can come to a deeper realization about, the hidden truths behind things. Kind of like the same situation with Buddhism, but in a very different light, because Western esotericism, obviously arose out of Europe and out of the practices of like the ancient Greeks and even the Egyptians and stuff like that. But it's interesting how like all these different aspects of religious slash spiritual practices kind of, blend into each other and kind of derive some of their, structure from each other. And that's all quite interesting, I would say. So, whatever religion or spiritual practice you're engaged in, or if you're engaged in none, really, keep going, keep exploring, and questioning whatever. I guess questioning your own sense of reality and improving upon it. So yeah, so let's continue to the last topic, third topic, the future. And so I'm a 20-year-old kid, like I'm kind of in a situation in my life where the future is very, I don't know, it's maybe a little intimidating, I would say. I don't really know what my future holds at the moment. Uh, you know, I I guess you could say that like I'm kind of in a situation at the moment where like, I'm slowly getting to the point where like I'm producing things, at least with the podcast, and I'm also like, you know, keeping my space organized, and I don't know, just generally uh, becoming a little bit more functional in that way. And that's kind of been a nice improvement in my life. But, the future is kind of a daunting thing when you're in your early 20s, late teens. Sorry. When you're in your early 20s slash late teens, you don't really know what like your 30s holds, or even your late 20s holds, because like, you haven't necessarily begun to like pursue like, if you believe that like we inherently have a purpose as human beings, then like maybe we haven't really aligned ourselves with our purpose yet, or maybe we just haven't really, maybe if you're more of an absurdist, maybe we haven't really created our purpose yet in our own psychology, which allows us to you know live a more prosperous life. And maybe we haven't really like taken our set of interests that we engage in, and really extrapolated that to a career, or maybe we haven't really figured out like the whole, you know, partnership thing with a woman or a man or whatever, or maybe more than just that. Who knows? You know, people do all different kinds of things. But like I would say that it's I don't know. It's like there's a lot of things that, like even your own value system in your set in the set of principles in your head and your worldview, like that's all kind of like shifting like the sands. Like you don't really know uh, you know, what you're going to value, like ethically, or in terms of your habits, or in terms of people, like in the next 5 or 10 years when you're in your early 20s. You just don't know, like where all those things are going to lie. But kind of one of the scariest things about the future is, assuming we have at least some degree of agency. The future is, not really set in stone. It's not determined. We don't necessarily have a completely, guaranteed fate that's going to, befall us, regardless of what we do. It's more like we can control what's going to happen in the future. And I think that's something that we learn throughout our 20s and even our 30s, is that we can structure our future, to our liking if we just, rise, put in more, improve our efficacy in various areas, and get to that point where we can really, uh, manifest our vision, if that makes sense. But when you're still fairly young, like you don't really know how to do that. You don't really know what's important. Things philosophically for you are a little bit confusing. And, for me, it's like I witness a lot of people around me who are like significantly older than me, like maybe in their 40s or 50s. And, they're kind of, at a dead end in their lives, or they're just struggling with like, with not being financially secure and a lot of stress and feeling like they've wasted a large portions of their life, and they have a lot of regrets and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily want to get to that point when I'm middle-aged. I want to be able to, in my 20s and throughout my 30s, you know, create success for me in whatever that means. Like establish some career-like thing throughout my 20s, and just generally be able to, I don't know, like produce things that are important, and maintain my health, and maintain a fairly optimistic mindset throughout the years that I'll live, that I'll be alive. And my question to you guys is, what do you think your future holds at the moment? And that's kind of a deep, maybe potentially slightly disturbing question, but what do you think your future holds, and what little things do you think you can do to improve your future, or the image of your future? What things can you integrate into your everyday life, that will allow you to, make your future more sustainable, and more and more positive? Or maybe should we just disregard thinking about the future altogether, and the past, of course, with that, and just live in the moment all the time? Who knows? Like sit on a rock, in the middle of the forest, and just, maybe hunt a squirrel occasionally, and have our little tent, and, maybe have a rifle, in case we gotta defend against bears. But, just live in the forest, and, live in the present moment, and not do anything. Not even engage with humanity. Who knows? I mean, it's ultimately up to you, right? As long as you're, not in prison or something, you actually able to, make decisions in the free, in the outside world. And if you are in prison for some reason listening to this, I hope well, I hope you can get along in there. But anyways, so yeah, so the future is kind of a daunting thing, and it can be, it can be, intimidating, because we don't really know what it holds for any of us. It can be a little spooky, especially when you're kind of a younger person. But yeah, I hope all of our futures will go well. So we'll see. And of course, no matter what your age is. So, I hope you enjoyed episode 3 of season 1 of the Cooltific podcast. This has been Religion and the Future. Thanks for watching.